boss and a candy man. Like a freight train rolling, bringing truth bombs down the line. Promoting the Southland 1 week at a time. Promoting the Southland 1 week at a time. SCV chat starts now.
Good evening. The views and opinions expressed in this program are not necessarily those of the SCV, its GEC, any division, brigades, camps, or other subsidiaries. Strictly those of us who are expressing them. Can everybody hear me okay? Because I am working with the new mic still. Let's show a green light, so I'm not muted.
Yeah, no, we can hear you.
When are you getting your mic in, Moose?
Soon, because I forgot and ordered it today.
Well, for me, it shipped very quickly. It took forever for the headphones to get in, though. So,
Yep. We're getting new equipment. It's a great day here at Chatland.
It's a Monday.
It's a Mon-
But anyway, happy Monday, everybody. And looking to see who all is in the chat. We got just about an even crowd from Facebook as well as from YouTube. So for our YouTube viewers, hello. Thank y'all for watching. Just going through, see Jason Lloyd, my reenacting hero. When I grow up and start reenacting really hardcore again, I want to be just like him with his great looking impressions. Ryan Rogers, hello. Frank Kirby, hello. Dr. Sandy Mitchum, John, Brian Hippie from my camp, Chief of Heritage Operations, Ron Kennedy, David Pope, Ray from Virginia, Al, David from Tennessee, Mark, Carl Faversham, several other people that have already commented. That's one thing that's great about that opening. Oh, and Commander-in-Chief Jason Boshears is on, and Kyle Thompson, Kentucky Division Commander, made it in on time. He's usually late. Kyle, you just broke. You were in the running for the Thomas Franklin Punctuality Award. And you were on time, so can't get it this year. But we've got an excellent episode, and of course we always think Moose and I always think that all of our episodes are excellent. But I think we have a good one for you tonight. We have a YouTube video that is rather inflammatory. That really is, not only is it historically inaccurate, it is factually inaccurate as well. And we're going to be debunking some of the things said in that video, as well as spreading some truth about a very important event, or a very important part of Confederate culture. Just some things on the chat front. We're still trying to share out your news as we're seeing it on Facebook. Trying to boost with our now over 700,000 people reach that we've had this year alone. We're trying to get the positive stuff that's coming out about the Sons Confederate Veterans, what our camps are doing out there in the limelight, so everybody can see it. It's like we have a show dedicated to that on Thursdays, but yeah, which of course this Thursday we have a very special episode of Look Around. We're not going to be doing a normal episode of Look Around. The Commander-in-Chief has declared this Thursday as the Charge Day, the day that General Lee, SD Lee, gave us the charge back in 1906. So we're going to have him on, and we'll be talking about the significance of that speech to our organization and what it means to not only the Sons of Confederate Veterans, but all Southerners everywhere, because there's a portion in that for everybody.
It's going to be a great day. And of course, please send in your camp news by Wednesday so we can post it throughout the week. I would rather you send it in as quickly as possible, though.
Yeah. So we're looking forward to that. Really quickly before we get into it, because it's going to be some jam-packed information. We have graphics prepared. Just to think, this time last year we didn't have graphics prepared, but ironically we don't have the graphics what we're about to talk about because we had to make room for the new graphics. Remember that if you are not eligible to join the SCV, but you still support what we are doing here, you can and you should join the Friends of the SCV. Visit scv.org, and there is a banner at the top that says Become a Friend. Definitely, it's open to male and females, just those who do not have Confederate blood coursing through their veins, but are still proud of being Southern and being what we're doing with the SCV. It being April and Confederate History and Heritage Month, and talking about the Friends of the SCV, I cannot be remiss to mention the late governor of Mississippi, Kirk Fordyce, who some 30 years ago, signed the first proclamation for Confederate Heritage Month in Mississippi. Governor Fordyce, although being a staunch supporter of what the SCV was doing and is doing, he's no longer with us, of course, did not have a Confederate ancestor that he could join under. His family, for the most part, immigrated from somewhere across the seas after the war, and those that he did have were from Indiana. His widow, former First Lady Mrs. Fordyce, she had a ton of them, but he did not. So you can definitely be able to help. Dave Perkins from Indiana needs a sponsor. So if y'all have a camp, if you're from a camp or know of a camp near him, reach out to him, because that's just one more person to help us with the cause. Dave's also one of our patron members. That's how dedicated he is to what we're doing. Oh, Todd Owens in the chat. It's good to see Todd back up and around.
I've missed you in the chat, Todd.
Good to see Todd back. I know I miss Todd too. Especially the moose costume. We wouldn't have that without Todd.
Thank you, Todd.
Yeah. Also, if you do want to, if your reenacting unit or your camp needs a new flag, like this one.
Ooh.
That's our flag. It'll be brought to National Reunion. Visit our lovely friends at Southern Flags and Quilts. Email Miss Susan at southernflagsandquilts@yahoo.com, or visit Sewing by Susan's on Facebook, facebook.com/Sewing by Susan. Very historical, authenticity at reasonable prices. And of course, as we mentioned, we have our Patreon active. And if you want to help us reach more people, consider joining Patreon. Just $10 a month. It's on auto draft. You won't even notice it. And after a couple of months, I think it's after 3 months, we can actually do annual memberships on Patreon. Ooh. So we've got some time to wait on that, but don't let it come up and hit you. Patreon gets some stuff. Our patrons get some stuff that other people don't. Also, don't forget we have our bonfire where we are doing our t-shirts. We've actually sold our first t-shirts. It was one of these, the Nathan Bedford Forrest attack in all directions. Get that, but there's other great ones like kind of a sentiment that we're all having, especially Moose and I, after prepping for this episode. All we ask is to be let alone, and you'll be one of them Yankees to leave you alone too. And of course, the South was right in 1861 because America was right in 1776. All of those are available on our bonfire. Just after the stream, go check the page and you'll be able to find it there. Anyway, Moose, you want to do the copyright stuff, or you got anything you need to cover before we jump into it?
Yeah, no, the sad thing is by the way, our Patreon members got to know what video we were reacting to a couple days before the episode, so they could know what we were going to be talking about tonight. Another perk. The sad thing about this guy is I actually read through. He's from the South.
Wait, pause. We forgot one thing.
We did?
Yeah.
What did we forget?
We forgot our Veteran of the Week.
Oh!
Yeah, so I'll bring up, I'm in the banners. You get the graphic ready?
All right, 1 second. Where is he at?
Should be somewhere around number 16.
All right, I see him.
All right, this Veteran of the Week is Captain John Madison McFall of Company F, 7th Confederate Battalion Cavalry, ancestor of the Florida man himself, Sean McFall. I haven't seen Sean in the chat yet, but I'm sure he'll see his ancestor, his picture in the upper right-hand corner here in the next little bit. Sean has a wonderful program that he does, Look Around Florida. Thursday, I accidentally called it Look Around Southwest Florida. I got used to saying that when it was just covering Southwest, but he has gone division-wide now there in Florida. So good for you, Sean, and thank you for honoring your ancestor and submitting the picture to us. You guys can still submit your ancestors. We're going to continue this on every week because without them, we would not be here doing what we are doing. So go ahead and throw him in the upper right-hand corner. He should be under the.
I got him.
Okay. I see him now. Had a little bit of a delay. So now,
Say it,
Sean, you just showed up. Your ancestor's ancestor of the week or veteran of the week, Sean. So he'll all except for during one graphic, he'll be watching over the proceedings tonight. And I'm sure he's proud of what you're doing down there in Florida and how you're honoring him. No, Chief Kennedy, we do not have a phone number for Southern Flags and Quilts. But I'm sure you can look her up on her Facebook page. Moose, you want to go ahead and do the copyright stuff?
All right. Yes, as everybody knows, we are doing a reaction video tonight to some awful history. But we do have to say, go watch the original video. Maybe leave a comment. But before we get started tonight, you need to remember that we are under the copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of Copyright Act of 1976. The allowance is made for fair use for the purpose such as criticism,
which we'll be doing.
Yeah,
which we'll be doing.
News reporting, teaching,
which we're doing.
Teaching real history, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in the favor of fair use. No copyright infringement intended in our video or our episode tonight. All rights belong to their respected owners.
Yeah, so while we're doing this, because we have a lot of graphics and things like that, just heads up, we may not be able to see y'all's comments. We'll go through and look at them whenever we get a break. While the video's up, I'll be on screen. You'll see me, but my screen will be focused on the video because we have certain points we want to pause at and talk about. So this video, really to give y'all a little bit of an update. It's not an update, but a little bit of information on it originally. There is some historical stuff in there. There's a lot of it is not based off of fact. It is based off of emotions, if that makes sense. He is appealing to the viewers' ethos, and it's you'll see.
He tries to bully people into submission. That got on my nerves a lot. You'll see it in this video every couple seconds, especially the first couple.
All right, so we're going to get started right now.
But it's undeniable that today.
Oh, hold on.
This is.
Can y'all hear this, by the way?
But it's undeniable that today, this flag, also known as the battle flag, has become synonymous with a certain type of worldview. It's been present at lynchings, hate rallies, and insurrections. In fact, this.
Okay, we're gonna. Oh, wait, crap.
This is not the Confederate.
Okay, I accidentally hit the wrong button. But as you could tell, kind of from his introduction there, with describing where the flag has been used, and we'll get into some other things about where other flags have been used later on. But he's already painting it in a negative light. He's leaving out certain things, like we mentioned with other flags, and he's really trying to appeal to those of a moderate. Yes, he is. Carl, he's not a leftist. He's a Pez dispenser. Anyway, so he's already on that, and he's talking about, of course, the January 6th insurrection, and trying to appeal on that. But we'll continue on.
In fact, the story behind this flag and the true Confederate flag is weird, complex, and a masterclass in bad flag design. So how did this flag become a rallying symbol for hate, violence, and the oppression of Black Americans? This is the curious guide to why the Confederate flag is racist.
And this is SCV Chat's response to this crap.
A historical perspective.
A modern day Southern perspective.
The
were
Civil War
very nice.
started with a Confederate attack on Fort Sumter on April 12, 1861, and concluded with the surrender of Robert E. Lee at Appomattox Courthouse in.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and stop right there. Anybody who, yes, Moose?
I have a trouble with pronunciation. Can I say something?
Yes.
Appomattox.
Oh, see, anybody who is doing any type of a historical perspective, get the name of Appomattox correctly. Appomattox. I mean, that sounds like he's trying to say hippopotamus. Already he's off on a bad start. He's making a very generalization that Lee's surrender at Appomattox was the end of the Confederacy. Really, it was the slippery slope towards the end of it, but it was not the final death nail. There were still armies in the field as Bentonville. For example, with the Army of Tennessee, the armies across the Trans-Mississippi, even the CSS Shenandoah, which was the last Confederate installation to fly a Confederate flag, did not hoist down their colors until November of 1865. And also at the same time, modern historians even claim that the war did not end until August 20th, 1866, when Andrew Johnson suddenly declared that it was ended. And exactly just like Dr. Mitchum is saying in the chat, only 20% of the Confederate army surrendered at Appomattox. So it was no way, shape, or form. This is an overgeneralization that I'm sure he learned in some history class, but is completely wrong. And yes, David, you're right that the Shenandoah just transferred their colors. Anyway, continuing on with the video.
Virginia on April 9th, 1865. The Civil War was fought primarily over the South's right to own black slaves. According to Alexander H. Stephens, the Vice President of the Confederacy, the Confederacy's foundations are laid, its cornerstones rest upon this great truth, that the Negro is not equal to the white man, that slavery, subordination to the superior race, is his natural and normal condition.
Okay, and we're going to stop right there. Boy, howdy, does he have a lot of stuff. And this is going to bring us up to our first couple of graphics. So first and foremost, fake news. Fake news. And it's kind of ironic that we're saying news because the reported Cornerstone speech, the copy of it, was out of a newspaper. But if Stephens did not say that, what did Stephens actually say? So in 1865, Stephens was imprisoned and wrote a paper or a part of a diary entry, I believe. And this is what Stephens said in 1865. As for my Savannah speech, about which so much has been said, in regard to which I am represented as setting forth slavery as the cornerstone of the Confederacy, it is proper for me to state that the speech was extemporaneous. And we had that definition up a little while ago. Moose posted in the chat, so that impromptu, I believe, is what it means. The reporter's notes, which were again, key thing here, the reporter's notes, which were very imperfected, were hastily corrected by me and were published without further revisions and with several glaring errors. Continuing on, Stephens said, the substance of what I said on slavery was that on the points under the old Constitution, out of which so much discussion, agitation, and strife between the states had arisen, no future contention could arise, as these had been put to rest by clear language. I did not say, nor do I think the paper represented me as saying, that there was the slightest change in the new Constitution from the old regarding the status of the African race amongst us. Continuing on, he said the status of the African race in the new Constitution was left just where it was in the old. I affirmed and meant to affirm that nothing else in the Savannah speech. So let's keep that thought there for a second, that the status of the African race in the new Constitution was left just where it was in the old Constitution. Furthermore, when you really look at the cornerstone speech, even if it was reported correctly, which Stephen, of course, is saying that is not, but even if Stevens was just trying to cover himself, there are many other points that Stephen talks about before he even gets to the institution of slavery, and in that in the speech, he talks about several different issues that were more major concerns for the South that led up to secession. That the institution of slavery or the laws regarding the institution of slavery began that they excuse me. That was just the straw that broke the camel's back. There were other more important issues. This was just the most recent one. So those issues include and I'm quoting, the old thorn of the tariff, the sectional use of general revenue for internal improvements were prohibited. Cabinet members were granted input in congressional bodies. One-term president was added to prevent the re-election bid being influenced by crony capitalism, and several others. So all Stevens was saying was that essentially that this is just the tipping point, if Stevens even said that. A next other thing, key thing, important, because again, we see this in modern academia, but we don't, we do not. We often say that people look at 18th or 19th century people with 21st century glasses. Stevens was what some people have opined was expressing the belief that was created by, I can't remember their names. It may be in this, I know it was in the article in the Abbeville Institute, but I cannot find it in here. But definitely check the Abbeville Institute for a couple of great articles written about the cornerstone speech. What Stevens was talking about is or referring to was a belief that in medical science in that era that was perpetuated by people in the North, that even Ben Franklin to an extent believed it in some of his writings, but that have since been disproven. And again, just like when we were talking about earlier, Harrison, before the stream, that just because back in that just because you look at something in years gone by, and their beliefs based on science, and now we see how those beliefs were wrong. They were just a product of their era, product of their time. And again, that belief was shared by both people in the North and in the South, and Lincoln himself to an extent. We had any comments we need to pick up before we start moving on?
There's one that I like from Dr. Mitchum, and a couple. But here's one I like from Dr. Mitchum. Vice presidents don't establish policy for the nation.
That was my next point. Good job, Dr. Mitchum. But yeah, that was my next point, that a vice president has never established policy for a nation ever.
Not to mention, our commander in chief. So he was misquoted by a reporter.
According to Stevens, it was fake news. He was misquoted by the reporter, tried to correct the reporter, and the reporter chose not to.
And CW makes a good point, CW Johnson Jr., that, his speech also talked about tariffs and taxes. Using this man's logic, does that mean the war was also fought about taxes and tariffs?
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was talking about, that Stevens was just listing out in the most important areas, the pretty much taxes, tariffs, and failures of the national federal constitution that the Confederate Constitution had corrected, and then just the issue of slavery was the boiling point in Stevens's opinion.
Mm-hmm.
All right, ready to continue on the video?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Lost cause ideologies formed during the Restoration period after the Civil War tried to change the recognition of the slavery-driven roots of the Confederacy. This rewriting of history was designed to remove the social shame connected to the tens of thousands of veterans who died for the Confederacy. The first flag.
Okay, so by I hate to say it, by YouTube's rules and regulations, we are allowed only to play 10 minutes of the video, so we have to fast forward through most of this. I'm trying to get to my note. All right about
It is
258. I know.
Yeah,
Hey,
just for
So-
common knowledge, he butchers the
the
explanation
history.
of
Yeah,
history.
he butchers the history of the Confederate of the national flags. We'll talk more about that. We've talked a lot about them in our past 3 episodes that we did on Fun with Flags. I don't know if you could still find episode number 1 of those, but number 2 and number 3 are definitely in our archives. So go check those out. But we'll continue the video on here.
Associated with the modern Confederate flag is actually a regimental flag for the Northern Army of Virginia.
Okay, so the guy can't even read his own slides, and he makes a good point. But we'll make it, but again, he's talking about the Army of Northern Virginia, not the Northern Army of Virginia. His
Bless him.
head.
There were many different regimental flags across the entire Confederate Army.
And yes, he that's the one thing he gets right, that there were many different regimental patterns, styles, and designs of flags that went across the Confederate Army.
Most regimental flags were variants of US, British, and French flag designs. However, due to early success and large enlistment numbers, the Northern Army of Virginia became known as the primary military force for the Confederacy. This led to increased symbolic correlation between the battle flag and the South's cause to defend slavery throughout the war. The original battle flag was square to save canvas, but a stretched out version of the battle flag was adopted by the Navy of the Army of Tennessee.
I didn't know that the AOT had a navy. I know we captured some gunboats, but I didn't know that we had a navy. So really quickly, what he is trying to refer to is the naval jack. And we'll go into some little bit of vexology for those that are
I love
yeah, I don't know Dr. Mitchum, but for some vexology, a little bit of vexology history, a jack is a flag that is flown from a short jackstaff at the bow or front of a vessel, while the ensign is a flag flown on the stern or rear. Jacks on bowsprits or foremast appeared in the 17th century. United or Confederated States have in many cases adopted a jack representing their national union or canton. So with the first national flag, our first naval jack was the circular canton, circular stars from the canton from 1861 to 1863. Makes sense. Guess what happened when we changed national flags? That's right. The naval jack changed. And actually, if you notice, the naval jack, when you talk about the naval jack, whereas on the national flags and on the battle flags themselves were more of a navy blue, this was more of a brighter blue. But of course, with the second national or stainless banner, and then of course the third national or the bloodstained banner, the jack would have been the same. So he's getting them confused. I mean, of course, there are plenty of examples of not only the square Confederate battle flags that were popular in the Army of Virginia, but there are rectangular ones. And like he mentioned, and like we'll give him credit for mentioning, there are other flags that the Confederate Armed Forces used that were not, that matched the national colors. But we'll continue on.
This flag would later be dubbed the Naval Jack. This is the flag that most people think of when they envision a Confederate flag. In the years following the Civil War, veterans of the Confederacy began dying off. Memorial services for these veterans would often feature their Confederate regimental flag.
Okay, so I have a question. God, I can't even get through 10 seconds of this without having to stop. When he's talking about regimental colors, is he talking about the ones that were held captive up north? For a vast majority of them that were surrendered to different places. I know that some UCV units that were able to bring their colors back home, used them. But I mean, for a lot of them, though, they were being held as trophies of war by the federal War Department or various states. And it wasn't until Teddy Roosevelt, in an act of reconciliation, said, "Hey, we need to start giving these flags back to their states from which they came." So again, regimental, regimental though flags, I think that, it's a little bit of a misquote. There are some flags that are surviving flags, that are, for lack of a better term, reunion flags. And he may be confused with those, but we'll continue on with his Pez headness.
Including the battle flag of Northern Virginia. However, around this time, there was still confusion about which flag best symbolized the Confederate cause. It was very common to see pictures and posters featuring both the Confederate flag and the battle flag, and this confusion continued until 1915.
No real confusion here.
In 1915, D.W. Griffith created The Birth of a Nation, and the film took America by storm. The film featured African American men acting sexually aggressive towards white women who are saved by the Ku Klux Klan. To say that Birth of a Nation was a blockbuster would be an understatement. It was the biggest film of all time, and basically the equivalent to a modern Avengers movie. The Confederate battle flag was extensively used throughout the film, and excitement towards the white supremacist ideals promoted in the film spread throughout the United States. The result was the
Okay, we're going to stop right there because I want y'all to pay attention to this. Now, first let's backtrack and put out a disclaimer. In no way, shape, or form are we advocating for this particular hate group. This hate group does not represent any of our ideology. The SCV has condemned and continues to condemn them and any other group that misuses the Confederate flag for any reason, shape whatsoever. However, the one thing I will say about that clip of Birth of a Nation, if you watch, or not, I don't know if you can watch it anymore, but if you read the synopsis online, part of the story is a story of a family that actually goes off to war, and that clip is from them going off to war. So he's putting that clip out of context. Furthermore, if you look at the historical record and the atrocities that were reaped upon the South, one atrocity that sticks out in my mind in Mississippi specifically was the murder of Minerva Cook. Mrs. Cook was living 7 miles outside of Vicksburg in April of 1865. Her husband had just come home from war. I think he'd been wounded and discharged. But her husband and her 2 children's sons were at their home one evening when a group of federal soldiers from the occupying army of Vicksburg, USCTs, were they left camp after roll call one evening. They approached the home. The home had already been ransacked about 6 or 7 times. They ransacked it again, threw the family out of the house. When Mrs. Cook put up a protest, they shot her and murdered her dead. And then again, they shot Mr. Cook. Lucky the children had hidden by that point. There was a court martial, surprisingly, and justice was eventually served. Military justice was served upon those that murdered those civilians, which is a rarity to hear about. But still, he's talking about that there are historical examples of stuff that happened during the war. But the main reason why we wanted to pause here, Harrison, do you see a Confederate flag in that picture?
GCB, I got some bad eyes, but I don't see one.
I don't either. Now the next couple pictures that we are going to show are from this same turn of the century that he's talking about. So we'll go ahead and show some next ones. You see any Confederate flags in this picture?
Not at all.
Okay, how about there in Minnesota?
Not in Minnesota.
What about Kansas?
Not in Kansas either.
I doubt they had them in New Hampshire, but we'll continue on. We've got some more pictures. Maine?
I don't see any in Maine.
What
See a
about
lot of
Indiana?
flags.
Nothing in Indiana?
No, nothing in Indiana either.
What about Ohio?
I'll be dog. There's none in Ohio either.
I highly doubt there's any there in Lincoln's home state of Illinois. But we've got some more. Let's see if we can spot any. What about there in Wisconsin?
I'm not seeing any in Wisconsin either, man.
New York?
Not New York.
Again, we don't have any pictures from New Jersey. But what about Pike County, Pennsylvania?
Let me see if I can really try to find one here.
I don't see any flags in Pike County, Pennsylvania.
No, they don't have any flags. Let's check the next one.
Okay. What about Vermont in the upper left-hand corner?
No, not any in Vermont either. Just these other flags.
Yeah, and then Colorado?
No, not Colorado either.
What about Connecticut?
Let's see here. No, I'm not seeing
Connecticut's
it.
on the left-hand side. And then what about this advertisement there for Iowa?
Yeah, let's check Iowa out. No, that's weird. You'd think they would use that on their advertisement if that was one of their big symbols.
Yeah, especially with what this video creator is implying. He's implying that the use of the Confederate flag in D.W. Griffith's movie was the inspiration for the second Klan to be born. But I have a serious question. Why would the descendants and all of those, and we pointed out those specifically northern states, why would the descendants of the men that came down here to murder our ancestors, why would they have or use the Confederate flag? They're not. They're using the federal flag, the U.S. flag. And if we were to take the same, it's hypocrisy for him to not point it out, but if we were to take the same standard that he is giving to the Confederate flag, we then also have to give to the federal flag as well. Yeah. Especially if you want to look at the atrocities that were done against Native Americans, as well as some other things that were not, our proudest moments in our history. But, if you're going to demonize one flag because a group used it, be fair across the board. Don't be a hypocrite about it.
Massive hypocrite.
Any comments on this one right now?
Let's see here. We got Jared off of YouTube bringing up the fact that a lot more bad things have happened under the federal flag, and we're not seeing any calls to ban that.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, we're not talking that we're wanting to ban the federal flag. That's not what we're saying on here. But what we are saying is that stop being hypocrites about history. Stop picking and choosing that, we can do something over here and say something over here because one particular group maligned with it. Again, just like going back to Stevens's original quote from 1865, when he was talking about the old Constitution and the new Constitution, that slavery was. Let's pull up that graphic one more time, Moose, if you can.
Which graphic?
Number 5. The status of the African race in the new Constitution was left just where it was in the old. Just reiterating that fact again, the U.S. Constitution upheld the institution of slavery until the 13th Amendment, and the second 13th Amendment. But the Confederate Constitution, it was on equal footing as well. Look at the same thing with the flags, that the U.S. flag has flown over atrocities, has been used by hate groups. I don't support when they use that flag, just like I don't support them using my ancestors' flag. And just because they do does not mean that represents what that flag means.
We do have some open discussion or not questions, but things to think about with some other flags, don't we? Or are we saving that for a bit later?
Well, we're going to save that for well, we can go ahead. Let's go a little bit later, and we'll get to it in a second.
It's my favorite
So,
part.
Formation of the Ku Klux Klan, which had died off 44 years earlier, and the adoption of the Confederate battle flag as a national symbol of white supremacy. The flag would go on to be present at lynchings, cross and church burnings, and it hung as a symbol to create fear in Black people throughout the South.
now you notice what he's doing is he's taking more modern pictures of that organization and showing those, and then suddenly, showing the Confederate soldier. Again, he's trying to make the uneducated viewer look and think that, okay, making them equate. Again, he did not, do that with the federal flag used in that picture, which ironically, you want to know something ironic about that first picture we paused on, was from Texas. That first one with the U.S. flag, Texas. Anyway, continuing on.
In an effort to protect racial segregation and white supremacy ideals, the Dixiecrat Party was formed in 1948.
Okay, we're going to pause right there on the Dixiecrat Party. Again, just to get through some more stuff. And we'll pick it back up at the 5-minute and 50-second mark, I believe. Or is it 45?
The guy that's it is, let's see here, 5:50.
That's what I thought. How about that memory?
The guy that this is like gaslighting at its finest. I couldn't agree. He is trying to bully you in his worldview, and he does that, as I said at the beginning of this episode. His whole video, he spends an enormous amount of time trying to make you feel like there's no way that this can't be what he's telling you.
Jack, I hope you're not talking about the one with Fitzhugh Lee on horseback. That was the Jeff Davis monument that was on Monument Avenue before the cultural wokeism continued on. So we're going to continue playing the video.
Let's see. As the civil rights movement was gaining traction throughout the United States, many southern states fought school integration.
What flag?
Seen a lot of American flags in his own video.
Brown versus the Board of Education in 1954. Georgia, for example, changed from a simple design that was reminiscent to that of the traditional Confederate stars and bar design to the battle flag that was used by white supremacist groups around the United States. The battle flag would go on to be unofficially used by Southern soldiers in multiple wars, including the Vietnam War. Specifically, when Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated in April of 1968, American bases in South Vietnam lowered their regular U.S. flags to half-mast. But in places like the Cam Han Naval Base, the tragedy was actually met with the raising of the Confederate flag and cross burnings.
Now, I'm going to have some intellectual honesty here. I researched to see if I could find any accounts of that. I could not. I'm not saying that there aren't any out there talking about the issue with MLK's assassination. I could not find anything myself. Somebody who's better at research can find me, and if I'm wrong, prove me wrong. But the only thing that I found was a piece of anecdotal evidence written on a discussion forum.
Yeah.
Again, I am not saying anything. I am just shooting.
I honestly think, and again, we can't prove it on this part, but this whole video, he's been using pictures either out of context are misleading because that's his whole point of this video.
or
I
or
honestly,
or, or his historical evidence is wrong and miscued. Like I said,
Yeah.
if somebody else has better information, by all means, send it to the scvyouth@gmail.com. We're more than interested in learning about it. But everything that I found in my research was that this was just one piece of anecdotal evidence on a discussion forum. So anyway, continuing on.
As of today, all state flags, including the Confederate battle flag, have been removed,
Confederate battle flag wasn't a state flag.
with a redesign of Mississippi's flag happening as recently as 2020.
Okay, so we're going to pause right there as we are two Mississippians who lived through that, who were there the day that the legislature decided to take away the voice of the real Mississippians, because in 2001, 2/3 of Mississippians voted overwhelmingly to keep that flag. They did not give us a chance to keep that flag. They just they took it away and forced a design down our throats, which really American ideology right there. Yeah, sarcasm, my views and opinions. But still, so he wants to bring up state flags. Now, during this entire time, he is talking about state flags, or he's talking about flags that deal with the institution of slavery or have some type of tie to the institution of slavery. Not mentioning the federal flag at all in any of his diatribe, but now he's talking about state flags, and he shows the flag of my beloved Mississippi that was on my father's casket and still flies over his grave to this day. That is the only flag I've known until this new one. But yet he does not mention this one.
I have been waiting for this for a long time because me and you have always talked about the flag of Hawaii, especially in 2020 when they stole our flag. It started off as just a joke. Well, I don't like Great Britain, so why does Hawaii get to have that? But
Yeah, my ancestors fought against Britain twice.
Yes, William Dolls. But
whooped you British twice, as I recollect.
But there's been a lot of atrocities to happen under the Britain flag.
Oh,
and
yeah,
that goes with any history. Any flag in the whole world is going to have something like that.
Right. If you want to talk about America's OG enemy, look at Great Britain. Look what they, the whole American Revolution as well as the War of 1812. Again, a flag that perpetualized the institution of slavery, and then even didn't with their colonialism when the empire, or the sun never set on the British Empire, because God couldn't trust the English in the dark. That's the things that happened in India with them. Look at what they did to the Irish there after the Easter Rising and the Irish War of Independence. The British flag, which I've nothing but that's I love my British ancestry, everything like that. But or even what they did to the Jacobites after the Battle of Culloden, the massacres that happened with that. It's again the hypocrisy. He wants to take the moral high ground of saying these things. Excuse me. He's taken the moral high grounds of saying these things about flags that are of my ancestry, that were symbols of Southern pride and things like that, regional pride, and yet equated to all this negativity and evilness. Yet he will not talk about other flags, other state flags that still deal with that. I believe in one of the comments somebody even brought up the Union Jack, and what did he say in response to it, Moose?
Oh yeah, no, he actually commented on the Union Jack. And let's see here. Let me bring it up real quick. This guy's arrogant as all get out.
Pez head.
Let's see here.
Jack, you're right. That was a president, a U.S. president. While you're looking for that, I apologize. That was a picture of a U.S. president speaking, as part of reconciliation between the North and the South at the Arlington Monument, which has now been, removed. So continue on, Moose.
Oh no, I've almost got it. I took a couple of them because he was starting to piss me off. Let's see here.
So far,
right.
Jason, I'm going through reading through our starred comments. Commander in Chief had asked, "Has anything been said in context without modernism view?" No. Jack, that is a very good point. The veterans themselves were confused of their own flags. Question mark. Yeah, we're going to talk about some veterans in the next little bit of this. And Ron Kennedy, you're right. Reconciliation, what's that? Doesn't compute. We're definitely seeing. No, the fact that nobody wants to reconcile with us now. Anyway, Moose.
So, a commenter from the South brings this up in, of course, accordance to the Mississippi flag. She was like, what about the Union Jack? And he actually says that we were founded on pure evil and that Britain was not. That Britain is a nation of past mistakes like many others, but we were founded on the sole purpose of evil.
So, even if you look at the Puritanian view of history, that the Puritans came over here for to escape religious persecution, completely ignored Jamestown, 1607, and the 40 years of history before that. That's pure evil.
Well, it blows my mind because you'll see this a lot of times. They'll give a pass to other countries that practice the same form of evil and did horrible atrocities. But they're like, well, that's the nation that is, that's its past. And they have worked hard to, make a brighter future. That's what he's saying in there. It blows my mind. He's trying to make excuses because he doesn't have a legitimate argument why the Hawaiian flag shouldn't be considered just as offensive if that's his argument for the Mississippi flag.
Right. But we'll talk about some more state flags in a little bit, especially when we talk about atrocities. But we're going to continue on with the video really quickly.
The best history of the flag can be found from Southern political scientist James Michael Martinez.
Notice, not historian, political scientist.
William Donald Richardson, and Ron McNeish Sue, who wrote, "The battle flag was never adopted by the Confederate Congress,
but it was in the canton of the first national or of the second and third national flags.
Never flew over any state capitals during the Confederacy, and was never officially used by Confederate veterans groups."
Well, right here.
Well, even that, there are pictures of veterans, and he's saying this is the best history of the flag, was never used by veterans groups, and there are pictures of veterans with the flag, as well as him saying that during the memorial services for these veterans that they use their regimental colors. Either they did do it and everything in your first half of your video is correct, or they didn't do it and this is the best history that you can find. One of the two. One of these things doesn't add up. You can't have it both ways. This is not Burger King. Continuing.
The flag probably would have been relegated to
Again, notice Gadsden flag. Just pointing that out there.
Civil War museums if it had not been resurrected by a resurgent KKK and been used by the Southern Dixiecrats during the 1948 presidential election. In short, if it wasn't for racist white supremacy groups, the battle flag wouldn't be the predominant symbol for Southern pride or the Confederacy. As a result, from a
veteran, UCV veteran, holding a little girl, with a flag.
Historical perspective, it's impossible to separate racist ideology from public displays of the flag.
So I'm gonna rewind that really quickly again because I interrupted right in the middle of it. I want y'all to hear that one more time.
Racist white supremacy groups, the battle flag wouldn't be the predominant symbol for Southern pride or the Confederacy. As a result, from a historical perspective, it's impossible to separate racist ideology from public displays of the flag.
So what he is saying is if you fly a Confederate flag outside of your house, or if you fly it, you put it on your ancestor's grave, or if you fly it outside of your museum and national headquarters, that you're racist.
Yeah.
If you publicly display the Confederate flag, you're racist. And well, that's of course he means in a non-contextualized form. Because if that's the case, then the Mississippi Department of Archives and History in Jackson, Mississippi, which has a fantastic display of the different flags that the Mississippi Division Sons of Confederate Veterans has paid for with our car tags, our car tag money, and have released that burden off of the taxpayers of Mississippi because we want to see our history preserved, but they're contextualized. That has to be what he means. He's not calling MDAH racist, though. But if you do it at your house, where it's your freedom of speech and your right to do it, you're racist. We're going to continue on that.
Wait, 1 second. While we're on his topic of, stupidity, he's thrown out an argument.
That's the whole video.
Yeah. California, about a year or two ago, put out an article that dogs are racist. So if dogs are racist and anybody who has a dog is racist, isn't this man a racist because his logo is a dog? That's the same argument he's putting out.
Very good point, Moose. Sadly, ChatGPT did not make this video because it was made before AI software was publicly available.
Would have done a better job than him, honestly.
No kidding. Continuing on.
Logical perspective. Most arguments about the ethics of flying the Confederate flag aren't rooted in historical facts. Rather, those who actively support the public display of the flag often talk about an individual.
Again, U.S. flag, just pointing it out there.
Interpretation of meaning. Most interpretations of the Confederate flag representing something other than slavery usually stem from propaganda campaigns called the Lost Cause movement, which find their roots in the wake of the Civil War as a way for Southerners to justify the horrendous support of slavery. However, the data about what Americans
But the veterans didn't use the flag.
actually believe about the Confederate flag is very telling. The best survey conducted on what Americans actually believe about the battle flag was conducted in 2020 by YouGov, an international research data and analytics group. Their research featured the largest sample size of any such survey ever recorded. Here are their findings. The plurality of Americans believe the Confederate flag stands for racism rather than heritage. The majority of Southern states believe that the Confederate flag stands for racism. The only exception is Arkansas, Louisiana, and Alabama. And the only group that predominantly believes the battle flag does not stand for racism is non-college educated whites.
Okay, so what he's saying right there is that if you believe that the flag doesn't stand for racism, you're non-college educated, you're ignorant, that other demographics don't believe this, and he quotes this. I believe did he say the best, or did he say the largest? I can't remember.
He was like the largest research of this type. The largest.
Let's look at his polling. He quotes YouGov. So if you go to YouGov's website, we're not going to, and we're starting at graphic number 15, Moose.
Gotcha.
And you look at their data. Do me a favor and pull down just for this, Sean. We're gonna have to pull down your ancestors so people could see it really quickly. So the way that they break down their data, or at least they say they break down their data, is within the U.S. Census region divisions of the United States. So they start off in New England, where they polled 1919 people. This includes the states of Maine, Maine, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, and Vermont. The Mid-Atlantic, roughly 4,000 people there. New Jersey, New York, Maryland, Pennsylvania, the Eastern North Central, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Ohio, Wisconsin, Western North Central, Iowa, Kansas, Minnesota, Missouri, half Missouri, half Missouri, Nebraska, North Dakota, South Dakota. Finally, we get to the what, the three categories that should be Southern. He gets a pretty good, chunk of folks from the South Atlantic, Delaware, Florida, Georgia, Maryland, North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, West Virginia, and Washington, D.C. The early, East, South Central, roughly 2,000 people from Alabama, Kentucky, Mississippi, Tennessee. Another 30, almost 4,000 from West, South Central. So Arkansas, Louisiana, Oklahoma, Texas. The Mountain Division, Arizona, Colorado, Idaho, Montana, Nevada, New Mexico, Utah, Wyoming. And then finally the Pacific, Alaska, Hawaii, Oregon, California, and Washington, almost 6,000 people there. But if you look at, and they do publish it, I'll give them that, the actual southern states that they ask. They asked, 915 people out of Alabama, which had over 3 million people per population, 300 from Arkansas, again, 2 million plus population, 1952 from Florida with the 17 million population, almost 800 from Georgia with almost an 8 million population, 257 from Louisiana, again, with almost 3 million in population, 163 from Mississippi, and I was not one of them. Out of almost a 2 million population. 1210 from North Carolina with almost 8 million people. I left off a number off of South Carolina's. I just now realized that. I apologize. When I was getting this information from the U.S. Census Bureau, the website crashed on me. So 408 out of South Carolina. I think they're close to 3 million and some change. Tennessee, 746 out of their 500 or 5 million people. 1202 out of Virginia, and there's 6 million people, and 2,710 from Texas, and their 21 million population. If you look at the U.S. Census information from the last census, so first of all, let's pause that for a second, because the differential in the number of people from the South versus the rest of the United States, and again, what we're calling the South is what they called former Confederate states. They are leaving out Maryland out of their statistics. They're leaving out Kentucky, and they're leaving out Missouri. And they're also leaving out the Arizonas and Oklahoma, which were Confederate territories. Little over 10,237 out of that 34,000. Roughly 24,361 were not from the South. Of course, you're gonna get a plurality of people if your plurality of people are outside of the South, obviously. And also, if you look at this last column of the statistics of people, percentage of people that moved in from another state, it's roughly 32% of the South in the past, since 2020, or since 2019 going into 2020, 32% of the South are not from that original state. Now, granted, you can have somebody move from Tennessee to Mississippi and from Mississippi to Alabama, and that counts in that. But still, think about all the economic boom that the South has had as people are leaving places of because of how we treat our economy, not getting political, but how much more economic freedom there are in certain portions of the South versus other places. You have people moving down here. They have no tie to the South whatsoever. And the only history and knowledge that they know, it was shoved down their throat by some Yankee school book and textbook, like Patrick Claiborne was saying. No wonder you're going to see that. And also, you look at the numbers. You go and visit 163 Mississippians. There's no telling what they're going to tell you. The most accurate data that we have had, again, as far as it being proven, was 2001. And even in some of the polling, which was not great polling when the state flag issue, a vast majority of Mississippians, more than half, wanted to keep the old 1894 flag. So their polling is skewed. Their polling is wrong. The key thing that he leaves out of his video when talking about this polling is the fact that it is weighted polling. Now, weighted polling can be good, but it can be bad. But in this case, this is the reason why I personally view that the weighted polling method used on this national poll is very disadvantaged for this. So first of all, the sampling bias of only 34,000 residents, the sampling size is too small to be compared to the entire population. And because of that, it can introduce a significant sampling bias. This means that the sample may not accurately represent the diversity of the entire population, leading to skewed results. Second, a lack of precision. The small sample size combined with the absence of published margins of error, that's the other thing I did not see on YouGov's website. They did not put out what their margin of error was, means that the poll's results are likely to be imprecise. Without knowing the margin of error, it is difficult to gauge the reliability of these findings. Third, questionable representativeness. Since the sample size is less than 0.1% of the U.S. population, it's unlikely to be truly representative of the entire population, even with weighting. Weighting can only do so much to correct for sampling bias when the initial sample is so small. So what weighting is before they even conduct their sampling or their polling, what they do is they take the various demographics of the ages that they're asking, and they assign what that percentage of the population is, and they have to figure out mathematically a percentage to weight that answer. So that's when we say weighted, that's what it means. So even though weighting can sometimes work, it's with the sample size this small, and especially with it being disproportional or even not even fair to the southern states, it's very skewed. It's very skewed. So there's again an unclear methodology. They never say that this was we conducted phone calls between. The only thing they say is that the poll was done in December of 2019, I believe the 6th through the 9th. But they don't say that they called people. They don't say that they had people out there at the grocery store asking them how they felt. They just said that they did the poll. And I'm not saying that YouGov does this, but there are professional survey takers out there to where people are paid to take surveys. I'm not saying that YouGov does that. I want to be perfectly clear on that. But they do not specify how they got their statistical data at all. And that should be that, and the margin of error is not publicized. That should send up red flags right then and right there for almost anybody listening. They are not transparent with their methodology. They are not transparent on their margin of error. And without access to that, reliability is questionable, and it's very questions the validity of their results. And finally, with it being and we're seeing this in this video, this because there's so much questionable stuff and because it's out there, there's a huge potential for manipulation. And without the published margins of error and unclear methodology, there's a huge risk that this poll will result in manipulation and misrepresentation for various purposes, such as influencing public opinion or supporting a particular agenda. And that's what we're seeing on that. He probably picked the worst poll that he could on this to throw that out there, and shame on him for that. Any type of intellectual honesty should have, done more research instead of just finding a poll that met what his point of view was. Even the internal polls that the SCV has commissioned has the margin of error published on it.
Yep.
Continuing on, I was waiting on you to do it. I forgot I'm patrolling the video.
And Americans who are 55 and older are more likely to believe that the flag stands for heritage rather than hate. So the data is clear. As a result,
No, it's not.
safe to say that if
Not
you
at all.
support or fly a Confederate flag, You're standing for something that the plurality of America views as racist.
Again,
Bully you again.
this is trying to bully you, trying to make you, or at least the younger generations feel that, okay, I am here, I am, I want to fit in with the crowd, I don't want to be canceled, I don't want people coming after me, coming after my job, things like that. I want to play it safe, so I'm just going to abandon what I've been taught all my life is right, or what I feel is right, or, don't even crack a history book and try to do any type of own research to find out if it's right or not, with the plurality, of that, and that, if you're race, or if you're flying this flag, you're racist, or you support this flag, you're racist and uneducated, again, with the bullying tactics.
It's just awful.
An ethical perspective. Many of the points in this video have been spent trying to address individuals who have fallen victims to the lost cause propaganda.
Victims, again, victims. Oh, it's not your fault. You are a victim of propaganda. That's what he's saying.
Propaganda campaigns regarding the true interpretation of the Civil War. However, I'd like to spend this last section talking about a few practical views on the ethics of the Confederate flag. Whether we're talking about the battle flag or the blood-stained banner, the flag of the Confederacy stood for a nation that supported the enslavement of a group of people based on the color of their skin.
And again, so does the Hawaii state flag because of their connection to the United Kingdom, and as we've proven, with the history of the United States flag as well.
This is obviously
Also France.
morally and ethically wrong. The Confederate flag also poses a pretty huge problem for those who wish to respect veterans of the U.S. military, as the Confederacy killed 360,222 active members of the U.S. military. Any memorial to such an organization on American soil is an insult to the legacy of those U.S. soldiers. I recently
Okay, and that's enough of that garbage right there, because it just continues on forwarding and forwarding and forwarding, and we've got some more. Yeah, well, I mean, it's just he's continuing to write up with it, but he talks about flags that fought against the United States. Okay, so and he talks about veterans, and he talks about how if you support Confederate veterans, you're also anti-veteran. We're not going to mention the Fighting Joe Wheeler that went on to fight in the Spanish-American War, or even the list of heroes from the South, military heroes that have Confederate ancestry that we mentioned this past Sunday, including it's not Sunday, excuse me, Monday. On our last episode, like Simon B. Buckner Jr., Nathan Bedford Forrest III, Audie Murphy, the list that we mentioned that had Confederate ancestry. But we're going to talk about really quickly two specific state flags. So first, we're going to bring up the state flag of Oklahoma. Pretty state flag. We're also going to bring up the flag of New Mexico. We're going to bring up the flag of New Mexico. You've muted yourself.
My computer froze for a second.
Okay. So there, again, the flag of New Mexico. Why are those two specific flags in common? Those are Native American symbols. Now, he's talking about that the Confederate flag should be disregarded because the Confederacy took up arms against the United States, which, of course, as we know, that the Confederacy took up arms in defense of itself when the Federals wouldn't leave like they were supposed to. Anyway, but it's essentially saying that we should not honor Confederate history because they took up arms against the United States. Well, the most honored people in our culture right now who took up arms against the United States are Native Americans.
Yes.
You think about that since the time of settlement to now, and you want to talk about a subjugated people, and you want to talk about a subjugated people that deal with the Confederacy. Look at the Native Americans. So what he is a sense saying is because the Confederate flag was used to take up arms against the federal government, then we should have no Native American symbolism or anything like that. because, at the Battle of Little Bighorn in 1776, George Armstrong Custer, who was the golden-haired boy of the Federal Army of the Potomac, who practiced what he did against the Native Americans on the Shenandoah Valley, who Phil Sheridan even said to Libby Custer that, and I'm paraphrasing here, I'm sending you the table that the surrender document was written on because your husband had so much to do with forcing the surrender, aka the subjugation of the South. When he was killed fighting the Sioux at the Valley of the Little Bighorn in 1776, along with 276 of his men that were Native Americans taking up arms against the federal government. So what he is saying with his intellectual dishonesty is saying that, that Native American history and culture should not be taught as well.
That if you're going to go by his argument, that's 100% what he's saying. He is not thinking through this any. He is blinded by what I like to call historical false, bad education.
He's blinded by hate. He's blinded by hate.
Pure hate. The first thing you learn as a historian, or the first thing I learned, someone correct me if I'm wrong, was to, take a stand in historical.
Yes, Carl, 1876, sorry.
Yeah. And he threw that out the window the first 5 seconds of the video. It blows my mind.
Yeah, and he later goes on to talk about how the Confederate flag was something used to marginalize African Americans, make African Americans feel bad, and that if you support it, you support people that believed in slavery, then people that supported the Klan, and then people that in the day of Black Lives Matter, you support suppressing them. While we're talking about Black Lives, Black Lives Matter and supporting the Confederacy, let's talk about, I don't know, this gentleman right here.
Mm-hmm.
What's that on his lapel?
It looks like a battle flag, Connor.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about this gentleman. Right to the to my right, or the two gentlemen on the right side of the frame. What's that to their left, Harrison?
Looks like another battle flag.
Let's talk about this gentleman that we have in the video. Looks like he's standing beside two Confederate veterans.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's look at these gentlemen right here from the United Confederate Veterans at the 1917 reunion in front of Confederate Memorial Chapel, R.E. Lee Camp No. 1 Soldiers Home. Okay, let's look at this monument that is in Canton, Mississippi, erected by W.H. Halcott to the memory of the good and loyal servants who followed the fortunes of Harvey Scouts during the Civil War. That was a monument erected to the paid for by a Confederate veteran to the men that rode with them. If we're going to talk about veterans, let's talk about this gentleman who is standing right beside that monument where it originally was in Canton, Mississippi, before it had to be relocated across the street. Or let's talk about, Jack, we were talking about Arlington. Let's talk about this man right here that's on the, or was on the Arlington Monument before the federal government took it down, and was sculpted by a Confederate veteran, a Jewish Confederate veteran at that. We have said it time and time again on this channel until we're blue in the face, but the Confederate Army in 1861 to 1865 was the most diverse fighting force in the world. The most diverse fighting force in the world. And the flag that they used, the soldier's flag, the battle flag, represents them. That's what they followed into battle. Oh, but there were no black Confederates. Well, let's look back at the #1 abolitionist in the 1860s, his exact words. It is now pretty well established that there are at present many men, present moment, many colored men in the Confederate Army doing duty not only as cooks, servants, and laborers, but as real soldiers having muskets on their shoulders and bullets in their pockets, ready to shoot down loyal troops. You can't see me back here, but I'm doing air quotes. Loyal troops, and do all that a soldier may do to destroy the federal government and build up that of the traitors and rebels. Frederick Douglass, printed that in his newspaper in September of 1861, or after Manassas, 1861.
Wow.
So how can a flag that and at that point it was the first national, but how could a flag that later came along that represented those men that those men fought under and died under and then met at and had enough respect that they wore it on their lapels, went to the veterans reunions, they did all these other things, a flag that represented them after the war. How can you look at those historical facts and say that they're racist? But then you can, but he can turn around and say that, oh well, the flag was taken and misused by certain bad actors. Well, so was the federal flag. So was the flag that the men that came down south and subjugated us with the bayonet. The same flag that they used is being used by the same groups. You can't have one without the other. You need some historical honesty. Moose, you had some stuff about the great Abraham Lincoln you wanted to say. I need to sit down before I start screaming.
Yeah, when we were going over this episode and just listening to this video over and over and over again, it just kept hitting me hard that he is just saying that the South are the evil. And that's one of the things I hate the most in modern history, that the South is just this evil, disgusting stain on American history. That's what they feel like. But they're not going to flip that thought process, say, on the North or their president, Abraham Lincoln. Let's not talk about the fact that Abraham Lincoln said some awful stuff in his diary, but let's do some stuff he brought up in debates when he was running for office. I am not, nor ever have been in favor of bringing about in any way the social and political equality of white and black races. He didn't want equality. He just said it right there. He never wanted them to have political rights. He never wanted African Americans to have social rights. None of that. He doesn't want us to be equal. That is from Abraham Lincoln, the great emancipator.
Well, also talking about Lincoln, and we mentioned the 13th Amendment. What about the original 13th Amendment? The Corn Amendment, that no amendment shall be made to the Constitution, the same Constitution that Stevens was talking about. Anyway, no amendment shall be made to the Constitution which will authorize or give to Congress the power to abolish or interfere with any state with the domestic institutions thereof, meaning slavery, including that persons held to labor or service by the laws of said state. And Lincoln, in his first inaugural address, said that noted congressional approval of the Corn Amendment and stated that he had no objection to its being made, expressed, or irrevocable. That was not a departure from Lincoln's view on slavery at that time.
And I mean, we could talk about Lincoln forever. I have let's see here. I have two more quotes. I will, to the very last, stand by the law of this state, which forbids the marrying of white people. And he says something else, I'm not, with African Americans. He didn't want interracial marriage. And, here's one that kind of got me in GCB's attention. Senator Douglas remarked that this government was made for the white people and not African Americans. Why, in point or mere fact, I think so too. That is from
from the Lincoln Douglas debates.
The great Abraham Lincoln. So,
in closing, guys, we could continue on. This. We have been literally at it for the past 4 hours now.
Oh, God.
Feeding off of each other. That's why we're so impassioned on it. Guys, this is why SCV chat exists.
Yes.
This is why we are here. This is why this Thursday, when we talk about the charge, it is so important for us to sit there and listen to it. Because in that charge, to you sons of Confederate veterans, we will commit the vindication of the cause for which we fought. Have we done that tonight, Moose?
I believe we have.
To your defense will be the Confederate soldier's good name. Have we defended the Confederate soldier's good name?
I think we have.
The guardianship of his history. Pretty sure that no matter how you look at the word guardianship, whether you believe it's that we're to be like a defensive guard or if you're to protect it for generations to come, we've done that. Check. The perpetuation of those principles was Sheila, and I know I'm missing some of it, but that's why it's so important for us to be out there, to be on social media, to be active, for us to be to educate our membership, but also educate the world, because that video has been up since 2020, and has over 60,000 views on that video. There are 60,000 people that have watched that and are thinking, he's right, or he has allowed them to influence them. We've got to stand up. We've got to fly our flag. We've got to plant our flag. We have to do what's right by our ancestors.
Amen. Kind of wrapping up.
I think we have some starred comments that we need to bring up. So,
you look at that while I'll kind of promote the week's events. This Tuesday, the Florida Man, of course, will have Look Around Florida on at 7 p.m. Confederate Standard Time. And, of course, Look Around the Confederation will be this Thursday, the Charge Day, at 7 p.m. Confederate Standard Time. And, of course, this weekend is Confederate Memorial Day. So it's
Beauvoir.
At Beauvoir. It is a great week.
Past Commander-in-Chief Paul Gramling will be speaking. So if y'all are in the Gulf Coast area, please come out. Really, really appreciate if y'all would. We'll talk some more about that. Guys, we have got to...
I got one more thing. If you're
okay, go ahead.
Well,
go ahead. Take your time. I'm going to let my ears rest for a second.
All right. So this is 100% why BNGCP came up with the idea of SCV chat. We had a lot of help getting to this idea, but this is the reason. To fight these videos like this online, to take back the narrative 1 week at a time. Yes, we love the episodes where we provide y'all entertainment. We love the episodes where we talk about the SCV. Me and Connor are obviously we love our organization because we believe in the charge given by SD Lee. But these videos are we feel like is our purpose. I am honored tonight to be a part of this product. I feel like we're going to reclaim the narrative. We're going to have a massive movement, and SCV chat is here to make sure we do not let these lies happen. And we're going to continue to do stuff like this, but also stuff like our Stonewall Jackson video. Again, there's not a lot of people out there that puts out pro-Southern content like we do. So I say all that to ask, please help us out. I don't like doing this as much as y'all probably don't like hearing about it. But support us on Bonfire and support us on Patreon. Because that's the only way we can keep attacking these people, because it does cost a lot of money to make all the stuff we do here on chat, and we want to keep making better stuff for y'all. So I'm done for the night. I just wanted to say that, GCB, you go at it.
Yeah, like Commander Kennedy said, share this episode out there. We have reached 700,000 people this year alone, calendar date. That's January 1st through today. So let's get it. And that's just on Facebook. If you add up our YouTube stuff as well as, the other platforms that we're on, we're growing. People are starting to pick up what we're putting down. and we can get this taken care of. We can start a momentum as we need to do. We mentioned last week in our episode on Southern heritage and the importance of keeping the Southern tradition as well as the Southern culture and what makes us who we are alive. That quote from Winston Churchill: "One of the signs of a great society that is the diligence with which it passes culture from one generation to the next. The culture is the embodiment of everything the people of that society hold dear: its religion, its faith, its heroes. When one generation no longer esteems its own heritage and fails to pass the torch to its children, it is saying in essence that the very foundational principles and experiences that make the society what it is are no longer valid. This leaves the generation without any sense of definition or direction, making the fulfillment of Karl Marx's dictum: a people without a heritage are easily persuaded. In such a situation, leaders must emerge," and that's the SCV. "We must emerge who have not forgotten the discarded legacy of who love it with all their hearts. They can then become the voice of that lost generation, wooing an errant generation back to the faith of their fathers and back to the ancient foundation and bedrock values."
Hear, hear.
So share an episode, join something. Patreon, Bonfire. Hey, if you join Patreon, guess what? In 3 months, you get a Real Chat Head sticker that only our Real Chat Heads get. If you join Bonfire, you get or buy a t-shirt off Bonfire, you get a t-shirt. Like Robert E. Lee said, a land without memories is a people without liberty.
Amen.
So anyway, we'll be back on Thursday with Look Around the Confederation, the Charge special. It should be a good evening. Right now, we've had 4 good back-to-back episodes, spitting fire and things like that. So Jabo, bring your A game. It's going to be fun if you're still watching. We're going to go ahead and close. What?
I said, there he is.
Okay. Stand up in the back.
Can you hear me in the back?
Yeah.
You can't just halfway do this.
You just can't halfway do it. But again, we will be back Thursday, 7:00 Confederate Daylight Time. Looking forward to it. Remember that if you want to listen to this episode or share this episode out, you can listen to us anywhere you get podcasts, except for on Apple Podcasts. But we're working on that. So Amazon, Spotify, everything like that. So you can do that. We are doing a little bit of extra podcast episodes, as far as we may tomorrow night do just a podcast on this episode of the show. We'll put it out or we may do a video and put it out on our Patreon first with our rundowns and things like that. Remember, guys, that it's Confederate Heritage Month. Do something to honor your ancestors. Put out flags, clean a gravestone, spread the truth about your ancestors, because surrender means that the history of this heroic struggle will be written by the enemy, that our youth will be trained by Northern school teachers, will learn from Northern school books their version of the war, will be impressed by all the influences of history and education to regard our gallant dead as traitors and our maimed veterans as fit for diversion. Patrick Claiborne said that before he passed away in 1864, paying the ultimate sacrifice. Guys, we appreciate everybody that's hung with us. We're going to go ahead and sign off now. Moose, roll that end credit footage.
And remember, no Fumar.
What Harold said. No Fumar in the elevator, and Rare and Frop and
Refrop. I'm with the South in life or death, and victory or defeat.